Okay, I'm going to start off doing a couple of your homework problems. I'm going to do 33, 35, and 37. And I'm going to show you how to use this reference sheet here that I passed out in class. So, let's look at problem number 33. So, number 33, we have x squared minus 144 equals 0. So here's our original problem. Now, we get our reference sheet out, and the first step says always check for greatest common factor first. So, we look at our whole numbers. We have a 1, x squared, and we've got a 144. Since we have a 1, there's no whole number that's a common factor. Since there's an x here but no x there, there's no variable as a common factor. So, greatest common factors out. So we go down the sheet. Do we have 2 terms or 3 terms? Looks like we've got 2 terms. So we're in the 2 terms, which means we must be looking at a difference of squares. If it factors, it must be a difference of squares. So, if it's a difference of squares, the first term and the last term must be perfect squares. Well, what times itself gets you x squared? That would be x. What times itself gets you 144? Well, looking on our sheet here, is 144 on our sheet? It sure is. It's right here. It's 12 times 12. Okay. So this is a difference of squares, so remember, these are going to be conjugates. Take the square root of x squared, that's your first term. Take the square root of 144, that's your last term. Then 1 positive, 1 negative. So then here, x plus 12 equals 0, so x equals negative 12. And on this factor, x minus 12 equals 0, so x equals positive 12. So there are your 2 solutions. So that was 33. Okay, now let's move over to 35. Question 35, we've got 5x squared plus 2 equals negative 7x. Okay. Well, is this set equal to 0 yet? Doesn't look like it. So first we need to do is get all the terms on the same side. Couple words of advice. I would leave the x squared being positive. If it's not positive, make it positive by moving it to the opposite side of the equation or multiplying through by a negative 1. Okay? Then you need the x squared, then the x term, then the whole number. So this term is going to come to the other side, and it's going to go in between these 2 terms. So you're going to have 5x squared plus 7x plus 2 equals 0. Okay? So now we come to our reference sheet. Okay? So there's our equation, here's our reference sheet. We check for greatest common factor first. We have a 5, a 7, and a 2. Do they have a number in common? No. They're all prime numbers. Is there an x in all 3 terms? No. This is just a 2, so there's not an x in common. So we have no greatest common factor. So then we look. Do we have 2 terms? No. We've got 3 terms. So we move down. Well, 3 terms, what's 3 terms say? Oh, we're going to do opposite of FOIL or guess or check, which means we're going to have 2 sets of parentheses. So we're going to write our 2 sets of parentheses. Now remember, the first term times the first term's got to get you the first term. Well, what are your options for factors of 5? Not many options. Got to be 5 and a 1. And you need an x in both. Now, you have the last term times the last term's got to get you the last term. So these need to multiply together to get you a positive, and since the middle term's positive, everything's positive, so these are both plus. Okay? Now, what about the factors? Well, we need factors of 2. Well, that's pretty limited. We've got 1 and 2. So the question is, should the 1 go here, or should the 1 go here? Should it be 1 and 2 or 2 and 1? Now remember that the middle term comes from your outers and your inners. These are your outers, these are your inners. So 5 is going to get multiplied by one of the numbers, and 1 is going to multiply by one of the numbers. So it's a 1 and a 2. So do I want to do 5 times 2 and 1 times 1? Well, 5 times 2 is 10, 1 times 1 is 1, 10 and 1 is 11, not 7. So it doesn't look like I want to multiply the 5 times the 2, which means the 2 must be going here and the 1 must be going there. Well, let's see if that's what we get. 5 times 1 is 5, 2 times 1 is 2, 5x times 2x gets you 7x. Okay, so now this is 5x plus 2 equals 0, which then 5x equals negative 2, x equals negative 2/5. Okay. Then we have x plus 1 equals 0, so x equals negative 1. Okay. So that was number 35. Now let me do one more. Last one I'm going to do is 37. On question 37, I have 2x squared minus 6x equals negative 4. Okay. Now, on this problem, is it set equal to 0 yet? Doesn't appear to be. So we need to bring this term over to that side because the x squared term here is already positive, so I would leave it positive. So we're going to have 2x squared. The 4 should be the last number because I want the squared term, the x term, then the whole number. So then this is minus 6x, and then switch the sign, plus 4 equals 0. Okay. Now, we come to our steps. Okay. Check for greatest common factor first. Well, we've got a 2, a 6, and a 4. Do they have a number in common? Yes, they do. Okay. Now, you don't have to take out the common factor, but it's going to make the factoring much easier. So, if we take out the common factor, they're all even, so the common factor is 2. Now, is there an x in all the terms? No. So, we are going to then pull a 2 out of this term, and this term. So, we're going to have 3 terms here equals 0. We're going to have a minus there. We're going to have a plus here. So, if you take a 2 out of 2x squared, you're just left with x squared. If you take a 2 out of 6x, you're left with 3x. Take a 2 out of 4, and you have 2. Okay. Now this is a simpler quadratic than this one. So now let's try to factor this guy. How many terms do we have here? Do we have 2 terms or 3 terms? Well, we have 3 terms, so we should be doing opposite of FOIL. So we can leave the 2 out there. This is going to factor in the 2 binomials. First term times the first term gets you the first term. Well, that has to be x times x. The last term times the last term has to get you the last term. Well, these two numbers multiply together to get a positive, so they're either both positive or both negative. Since the middle term's negative, they both have to be negative. Now, what are factors of 2 that add up to 3? 2 and 1. So we've got 2 and 1, or you could put 1 or 2. So now we've got it factored. Now we have to find our solutions. Since this number 2 doesn't have a variable attached to it, it's not going to be part of your solution. You could actually divide it to the other side, it would disappear. So x minus 2 could equal 0, so x could equal 2. That's your one solution. Or x minus 1 could equal 0, so x could equal positive 1. Okay? So there's a couple examples to show you how to use the reference sheet.